So today we're going to look at podcasting in education. But what is a podcast? Well, podcasts are audio or video files, and they're available on the web. They can be cataloged and automatically downloaded using RSS technology. And we'll get into RSS just a little bit more here shortly. But first, let's look at a history of podcasting. So in the 1980s, it was referred to as audio blogging. And then in 2003, when we started to see the rise of broadband internet and digital audio playback devices, then we started to see the first RSS audio feeds. In 2004, taking the word iPod and broadcasting, the term podcasting was coined. And then in 2005, there was a video-based podcasting called vodcast or vidcast, sometimes how you'll hear it referred to. There are essentially three types of podcasts. There's audio, enhanced, and video. With audio, it's usually just a standard MP3 format, and you'll just hear the audio version. And then in video, you're going to see video footage usually with it, and again, it can be MP4. Enhanced is sort of a special case. It's a variant of the standard podcast, but it can include images, text, and other medias. And it can also include audio. You may see them divided into sections or use images to indicate the beginning or end of a section. It allows for quick navigation between these sections. It may also have some embedded links or allow you to access specific web resources when you listen to them. It offers a lot more features, but if you decide to use an enhanced podcast, then you need to be aware that it's limited to like a higher end personal media player like Apple iPod or Apple iTunes. And so with these, you can't just use the conventional MP3 audio podcast. And so you need to be aware of this, and maybe if you decide to do an enhanced one, go back and include a conventional MP3 audio podcast version as well, so that any of your listeners can hear. So let's look at some of the characteristics of podcasting. One of the first characteristics has to do with the downloads. And these downloads are file-based, and so they can be downloaded in real time or downloaded for listening later. Other options might include a manual or automatic download. You can subscribe to a particular podcast RSS feed. Podcasting uses RSS technology, and when we talk about RSS, what that stands for is really simple syndication. And this technology is what allows a listener to either listen at will or to subscribe to certain podcasts, so that they automatically get those feeds as they become available. Another aspect is the devices. One of the things you want to watch for is these are available on any personal device, like computers or any portable device with MP3 capabilities, and this includes iPods, iPads, cell phones, and a personal computer, and really anything that has an MP3 capable player attached to it. The great thing about podcasts is that they can be both informative and entertaining. It can be used for professional development, to increase classroom enthusiasm, share projects, teach students to work together, and it teaches them to communicate in a whole new way. They don't have to worry about books. The most beneficial aspect, though, is that students, parents, and teachers have access wherever they go, thanks to the rise of portable devices. Podcasting is very simple, it's convenient, it's time-saving, and it really is interactive learning at its best. I mentioned that it can be used for professional development, but in the classroom, it can also be used to generate enthusiasm. It can be used as collaborative projects because kids are enthusiastic and they're collaborative. They're also becoming experts of their own learning. It's project-based. You can use it to share projects. for educational purposes, communication. You're able to communicate in a whole new way with your students, with parents, with members of the community. You might even use podcasts to inform your parents of assignments or daily classroom learning by giving your parents an inside view of what your child's learning in the class every day. You can use it to reinforce or retain the information to your students. If you were reading a piece of literature, you may also have that literature read on a podcast that they can go home and listen to it as they're working through their assignment, so that it's just reinforced, whether it's the vocabulary, whether it's the story. It also helps students catch up if they were absent. If you have your lessons recorded on a podcast, then whenever they go home, they can, or if they miss school, they can listen to it whenever they get home, and then it's like they didn't miss that day. They're portable, they're easy to use, it's convenient, it saves you time, it's cost effective. Most of the equipment needed to create a podcast is already located in your classroom. So what other ways might podcasting be used in the classroom by teachers and students? Well, teacher uses. You could promote classroom or school activities. You can summarize lessons for students or parents, review the materials, supplement the content, introduce new content, aid students with reading disabilities. They found that podcasts are very beneficial to readers with dyslexia, to make announcements, create tutorials, study guides, or even just to record your lessons. So how might students use? Well, they might use it for a book review or document a field trip, to report classroom news, classroom discussion, review the content, oral reports, project sharing, research discussion, or sharing, debate. You may keep a classroom blog and allow students to use podcasts for blog entries, or you may subscribe to news headlines and incorporate these headlines into a lesson. Another example, as a language arts teacher, I would assign each group a topic to research. Each group would need to create a podcast discussing their research, or what they were surprised about, what they found difficult, what they found interesting, how they plan to use this information for their presentation. Or I might assign students to give an oral report on To Kill a Mockingbird, where they have to give me specific evidence that they found within the text, which also meets one of the Common Core standards. This website I'm about to show you takes you to a page of various text podcasts where work is narrated for you. Let's see. This website is Kids Learn Out Loud. And one of the things that I love about this website is that it does have many sources of literature, history, languages, science. It has all these different curricula areas, but you can go into these, and some of them are just reading back the text to you even. So, like, for example, if we went to the Chronicles of Narnia, we could listen to the podcast where someone reads it to us, and a new version is released of the chapters each week. And on this particular one, you can access all of them at once because it was done at a previous time. So if you were interested in reading the book, The Chronicles of Narnia, you would be able to pull it up and just listen to it like an audio book almost. So it would be a really great way to reinforce your learners' content that you're giving them. So how does it work? Well, you are going to have to create a multimedia file, include the RSS feed. Users will need to subscribe to your podcast, and then the content will download automatically. The equipment that you would need to view it would just be a computer with internet access, a portable digital audio playback device like an iPod, computer, iPad, cell phone, and you're going to need speakers, obviously, or something that has the ability for audio output. And to create it, what you would need is a microphone, audio recording software, which we'll get a little more into that in just a minute, and a computer with internet and a camera if you were interested in doing a podcast. So some of the tips that you would want to kind of look at with equipment is that you're going to want to focus on your microphone, what type of microphone that your audio device has. And then when you look at the audio, there are some free programs out there on the Mac. It's one of the programs is GarageBand, and available on Mac and Windows is Audacity. If you have a lot of remote guests on podcasts, then you're going to need software that lets you record like Skype calls. And on Windows, the Skype recorder's free. On Mac, there's a call recorder, but it costs about $20. When you get ready to plan your podcast, the most important component that you need to keep in mind for it to be successful is great content. You want to think through what your podcast should be about. How do you structure it? What makes it worth listening to? And some suggestions I included was to listen to several other popular podcasts to find a format that really works for you. Pick a topic and a structure, and consider incorporating music into it. When you create it, you want to create 1 to 2 practice shows to test and adjust audio levels and to edit skills before recording your first podcast. You want to record your first podcast using software such as GarageBand for Mac or Audacity. Edit it, add music or sound effects, because this is really going to pique the interest of your students. I've included also a list of some websites that you can go to that will help you add music and effects to your podcast. So to post your podcast, you're going to need an RSS feed with an RSS generator or aggregator. Once your podcast is uploaded, it's going to be helpful to assign an accurate or very precise title, because you want to be able to have the ability to recall it easily at a later time. And the easiest way to post a podcast is to use Blog or Blogger, WordPress, one of those. It allows you to post each episode as a new entry. And I've got a couple of notes down here. WordPress offers a few specialized themes specifically for podcasters. Posting to Blogger or WordPress will automatically generate your RSS feed for your podcast. And then you'll need to get your podcast listed on popular podcast aggregators. And one of those popular ones is iTunes. Once you've posted it, you will have a working RSS 2.0 feed. All right, so there's another website that I included on creating your podcast. And it has a lot of really good information. It's on Rewrite Think, and it goes into different ideas for teachers, review audio dramatization process, how to gather your equipment, how having your students record their podcast using equipment that you already have. It just has a lot of good information. And it also has some resources attached to it, like lesson plans, student interactives, printouts that you can use to give your students. The only thing you want to be really cautious about is viruses downloaded on your computer, because anytime you download something from the internet, you run the risk of viruses. You want to make sure you're not violating copyright, and you really want to look at this information up front before, if you're pulling someone else's podcast, because sometimes it can include inappropriate content, so you're really going to want to screen this before you show it to your students. In my reflections, I mentioned that podcast offers a lot of benefits, both inside and outside of the classroom. It's really a good tool for teachers, and it's a way to offer your students further learning experience. It provides them a whole new approach to communication. They can utilize the advantages of podcasts while on the go, and can use the materials to supplement education at any time at their own pace. And the most amazing part is that the files are automatically downloaded as they become available, so they're readily available for listening as opposed to streaming the content, which sometimes can be time consuming, especially with slower or older computers. You know, at the beginning, I thought I knew kind of in theory what these were, but to be honest, I had never subscribed and didn't have any interest in subscribing to one. But during my research, my eyes were really open to how easily it is to incorporate this into my classroom and with my students.